Welcome to tonight's Tanya class. We are holding in Tanya, the second section, Shar, HaYichud, Veemunah, chapter 8, Perek Ches. As always, every chapter in Tanya, because this is the Bible of mysticism, is very, very unique and a foundation and something important in the world of Kabbalah. And tonight's class is about Shar, HaYichud, Veemunah. It speaks about the oneness of God, and that ultimately the Alter Rebbe points out that we cannot comprehend the oneness of God as our operation, that we think that we operate is totally on a different level than God, and therefore we cannot comprehend the oneness of God. So the Alter Rebbe starts with as follows, and he says like this, that the Rambam writes that God, the Muhusai in Hebrew, who God is, Atzmusai, the essence of God, Daitoi, the intellect of God, is all one. All one. In simple Hebrew, and I'll translate, Achdus Pshuta, oneness, simple oneness, that's not Murkav, which means it's not put together from wanting, thinking, it's all one. All one. The Alter Rebbe goes on to explain, not only is God's essence and God's das one, but even the emotions, all the names, all the adjectives that the Torah gives to God, it's all one. In other words, there is nothing other than God. The only real existence is God, and everything is God. In other words, there's no such thing as a table and a chair and a person and a place or a thing. There's nothing.
Just
and
God.
Only God. Even the essence of God, the wisdom of God, the will of God, or any adjective or different names that the Torah uses for God, it's all one. But then the Alter Rebbe says that this idea that it's all one, it's really hard, or almost impossible for us humans to comprehend. Why is that?
The finite brain.
Why is that? The Alter Rebbe goes deeper into that, and he says like this. Because the Alter Rebbe explains, and this is really the heart of this chapter of Tanya. Next week he goes back to talking about the oneness of God, but now we go into talking about how we cannot comprehend because we operate differently, and he goes into great length how we operate, and it's a really, really fascinating chapter that really outlines the way humans, us, and all creation of God works. And he says like this: the highest power of energy that we have is called what? Chochma. Chochma. That's the highest power that we have. What does that mean? That means that the first source of energy and power and connection that we have to the world through ourselves is Chochma. What does Chochma mean? Chochma, as we know, is a flash of an insight. So you're trying to figure something out. You're thinking, you're meditating, and all of a sudden, you have the flash idea. That's Chochma. So anytime you're trying to come up with a solution, figure out how to do something more meaningful, relate to a situation, you stop and you think. As we know, Chochma is made of the word koyach, the power of ma. If you want to activate Chochma, you ask one question. Ma, what? And you keep on asking what? What is it? What does it mean? What are you saying? What? What is like the knock on the door to get some kind of glimmer and to get some kind of insight. Ma, what is it? What? What do you want? What's going on? Right? What happened? Koyach ma, the power to ask. Now, in order to ask what, you have to be humble. Because if you're arrogant, you know everything. So you don't have to ask what happened. I know what happened. What are you feeling? I know what you're feeling. That's when you're arrogant. But if you're humble, guess what happens? You ask what? So it's a humbling question to ask what. And that is the first level of any understanding, revelation, connection, communication, is starting off with Chochma. And that's where we operate. And that's the highest power that we have. So the highest power that we have comes from humility, comes from the ability to be able to ask what? Chochma. Once you ask what, and you have this glimmer of an idea, then all of a sudden, guess what? You can start developing the idea. You go into the world of Bina. Bina is what? What does this mean? More details, more comprehension, analyzing, getting more information on those specifics. So Bina is already more of a development of the idea. Now, the world of Chochma and Bina is two different worlds. The world of Chochma is new ideas. Bina is nothing new, but you're taking the ideas that were new, that were abstract, and you're making them more real, more alive. You're getting more information about it. You're getting color to it. You're getting a full picture of what's going on. That is the level of what? Of Bina. And this is the way we operate. After we have the flash of the idea, and we have all the details, what happens next? Das. Das is now when we start applying. Oh, so what does that mean to us? What does it mean to this? And you start connecting intellectually. It's an intellectual connection. So Das is basically what? An intellectual connection. Chochma, Bina, and Das. That is all in the world of intellect. From the world of intellect, what happens next? We go into the world of emotions. Emotions in general, the midot. In the midot, you have, for example, the midah of chesed, kindness, which basically from there comes love. Gvura, which comes more discipline, and to all the midot. But the way it works is, midot, emotions, love, warmth, discipline is not abstract by a human. It follows generally from the whole Chabad. Specifically, what's its connection to Chabad? What's its connection to the intellect? Das. So, in other words, let's work backwards. The greater your Das, the greater your Chochma and Bina, but more specifically your Das, that's how great your emotions are going to be. So, in other words, like this. The analogy the Alter Rebbe uses is, if you're a immature intellectual person, so let's say you're young, biologically you're young, and therefore emotionally, and therefore intellectually you're young, you're going to have a desire for love of what? Simple things. Simple. A kid. What does a kid want? Kids' toys. Age appropriate. Why? Because the Das is not fully developed. As your Das gets fully developed, a toy for a 2-year-old doesn't work for a 5-year-old. And then for a 10-year-old, a 15, and so on and so forth. In other words, as the Das develops, so does the emotions develop. So the emotions is a direct consequence from the Das. Once you have, again, starting with Chochma, Bina, Das, the intellect, and then the midot, which brings the midot, so as the Das causes the midot come from the Das, then what happens is you start taking those ideas and those feelings and starting to process it in your thought. So when you think about whatever you're thinking about, love, discipline, an idea, the source is coming from where? Not from midair, it's from a feeling, which came from a thought, but not from a thought, from an intellectual comprehension. And as the thought develops, you have more clarity in the world of thought. Once you're finished in the world of thought, guess what happens next? The thought brings speech based on the intellect, based on the emotions, based on the thought. You're going to say something. And hopefully it's all kind, right? After the world of speech, what happens next? Then you go into the world of action. So the process is intellect, all three steps in intellect, Chochma, Bina, Das. Emotions, obviously all of them. Then into thought, then into speech, then into action. That's the way every human being functions. If you cut corners, you know what happens? It doesn't come out right. It's like if you make a cake and it calls for certain ingredients, and you take out one of the ingredients, what happens? It doesn't come out right. Or maybe it doesn't come out at all. The same thing also, if you're a human being and you start straight with your emotions, you miss the intellectual component, not going to be good. 9 out of 10. Or if you think and you don't allow yourself to feel what you're thinking, and you start thinking and talking, it's not going to come out good either. You have to go through the process, and the more time you spend on the process, the more meaningful it's going to be. Think about it simple. Let's say, for example, in your mind, you decided you want to do something nice for somebody. The person's a nice person, you want to do something nice for them. So you can go ahead, okay, say, hey, I want to do something nice for you, you don't do anything. But you can think about it. Who's the person? What's your relationship? What is the person like? What do you want to do for them? The more time you spend thinking about it, and what was the question about Chochma? What? Like, what can I do? What would they enjoy, right? And the more you spend time with that Chochma, you're going to come up with different ideas. It doesn't mean you're going to do all of them, you're going to come up with different ideas. Then you're going to take the Bina process, and you're going to start developing it. This, that, all the details of it. The Das will create that connection. Ooh, is a person going to appreciate it or not? And you might have to go back to square one. But the Das will allow you to connect to the person and see, is it going to fit? Once, obviously, it all makes sense intellectually, then emotionally you get excited about it, right? Meanwhile, nothing happened. Then you start thinking about it, then you can talk about it, and then you go do it. And sometimes even if you don't talk about it, but the process of talk where you're basically going out of your head, going into the world of delivery, of action, goes through the spiritual process of speech. Now, that is the process the way we operate. That's the way humans operate. Now, so two things Alter Rebbe points out. Point number one is, take a process that started in intellect. Chochma, Bina, Das, emotions, thought, speech, and action. And you end up with a present. Right? The analogy we gave. You have a nice present you want to bring to someone. Whatever the present may be. Let's use this watch, right? You want to bring someone the watch. Now, the watch is a watch. It's all what it is, a watch. A piece of metal, glass, right? It's a watch. The watch, the physical watch, compared to that initial thought you had in your head, could you compare the two? No. This is a watch. It's all what it is. In your head, there was like, wow, a brilliant idea. I want to do this with that person. And when you got excited, as you go down the steps, the energy gets less. So as you measure the energy in the actual watch, because the watch is just the watch. You don't see the watch dancing, even though they have dancing watches. But right? But you don't see the watch dancing. So the energy in a physical watch is really not much. What's energized about the watch is if you go back to where you're talking about it, obviously there's more energy. You're thinking about it. Oh my gosh, you didn't stop thinking about it. Right? Then go back to your thoughts, and then your intellect. So the Alter Rebbe says if you give a look from the last step, the step of the action, to the step of what?
Thought.
Not thought. Thought is the middle. Intellect, Chochma, it's like worlds apart. Worlds apart. Now, so you see a major downgrade in energy with each one. Now, that's point number one. Point number two is our initial first, we call it first and highest level of energy in all the steps is what? It's Chochma. Now, the Alter Rebbe says, God. What's Chochma by him? Is Chochma a high level or a low level compared to God? Huh?
So compared to God, it's low.
It's low. It's almost like nothing. It's nothing. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe says our highest ability to really connect to things is not through the watch, it's through Chochma. What is it? What is it, right? And you get these flash ideas. That's our highest ability. Our highest ability that we have to connect to a new idea is Chochma. That's what we use to study, and that's what we use to relate, and so on and so forth. For God, it's so infinite. What is Chochma? It's like nothing. So we're using, again, that's the highest tool we have. We're using a tool of Chochma to try to comprehend the oneness of God. How can we do that? How? And therefore the Alter Rebbe says, guess what? You can't do it. You cannot use your highest gift to comprehend the oneness of God. So in other words, like this. The oneness of God means, as we said in the beginning of the class, everything is God. There is nothing that's not God. And not only is everything God, but even the different attributes, different. We call it intellect and emotions of God and the will of God. All these things, it's all one. It's not like it's pieces to the puzzle that make one God. You need to have all these pieces that make God. No, everything is one.
It's already one.
Does that make sense to us? No, because by us, intellect is intellect, emotions. But why can't we comprehend it? Because our highest level tool that we have to comprehend things is nothing compared to God. Nothing compared to God. What we do know is that God's achdus, God's oneness, and here's the key word, is pashut, which means it's simple. Simple means it's not complicated. It's not put together from pieces. It's not murkav. It's not mixed and packaged up from a bunch of different pieces. It's all what? It's all one. So here the Alter Rebbe lays out in this chapter two beautiful ideas. One important idea is that the oneness of God is so pure that there is only one thing. However, we cannot comprehend it. And the reason is because ultimately, the way we comprehend things, the highest tool that we have is nowhere near anything of God.
And we complicate things.
And we complicate
And he
things.
makes
And we
it
complicate
simple.
things, exactly. So in other words, if we really want to connect to the oneness of God, as the Alter Rebbe calls it, the achdus hapshuta, the oneness of God, what do we need to do? We need to realize we really don't have the tools intellectually, and we have to let go, and that's why it's called Shar HaYichud Veemunah. Because the only way we can get to the oneness of God is not through up here, it's through something above it. Faith in the oneness of God. From intellect, it's not going to come. It's going to come from our faith in God. And we're able to have faith in the oneness of God, then we can connect. Not through intellect. We can't say we understand because we don't understand. We can connect to the oneness of God, and then we can really be connected with the real oneness. And then when you connect with the oneness, it creates the greatest happiness, joy, and satisfaction that we're able to achieve.